this approach will be determined in just a few seconds at minimums. The captain must decide, is the aircraft aligned? Is the crew aware of height above ground? And sink rate? Are the visual cues clearly defined?
100 to go. Sequence flashers, approach lights. Minimums, no runway. Flash 25 flaps. Gear up. Gear up.
This missed approach was mandatory because visual cues at minimums would not permit safe transition to contact and landing. TWA Flight Operations Training presents Approach Awareness. This film will show crew coordination procedures designed to achieve optimum crew awareness during the approach. It will stress altitude awareness. For example, the first officer will call out the field elevation and decision height altitude as the pilots review the approach plate. At 500 feet above the ground, the captain will call out 500 feet. The first officer will immediately respond with actual airspeed and sink rate. At 100 feet above minimums, the captain will call out 100 to go. The captain will be flying the approach on instruments. The first officer and flight engineer will aid in cross-checking and alert the captain if deviations exist. The Standard A configuration is 3,000 feet long. It consists of centerline lighting spaced 100 feet apart, a 1,000-foot bar, sequence flashing strobe lights, red terminating bar, and red wing bar lights. Runway lights include threshold lights, high-intensity runway lights spaced 200 feet apart, and on some runways, centerline rollout lights, touchdown zone lights. Runway markings include threshold marking, runway direction number, center line markings, and touchdown zone markings. Another visual cue is the runway contrast depicted against its surroundings. Visual cues seen in daylight may be completely lacking at night. 904 in progress to O'Hare International Airport. The crew is just completing the landing preliminary checklist, descending through 18,000 feet. Reading this checklist early will allow them more time to prepare for the problems associated with high-density traffic.
Check. Gross weight, indicated airspeed bug.
Set and cross check.
Altimeters.
Set and cross check.
Go around deeper.
Check.
Parking brake.
Off.
Preliminary is complete.
O'Hare Approach Control has cleared Flight 904 to descend to 4,500 feet for an expected approach to runway 14 left. The captain and first officer are reviewing the approach plate.
Field elevation is 667 feet. Our decision height will be 867 feet.
The approach plate shows that an approach speed of 120 knots will require a 530 foot per minute sink rate. The captain and the first officer have reviewed silently the missed approach procedures.
TWA 904, reduce speed to 200 knots.
TWA 904, slow to 200. Flaps 14 degrees. Flaps 14.
TWA 904, you cleared to Lakewood intersection, descend to 3,500 feet, report reaching.
TWA 904, cleared to Lakewood, maintain 3,500, leaving 4,500. Level 3,500.
TWA 904.
Final checklist.
Rudder aux pump.
On.
Rudder and hydraulic system pressure.
Check.
Altimeters.
Set and cross check.
No smoking sign.
On.
TWA 904, cleared for ILS approach to 14 left. Depart Lakewood 095 degrees. Report leaving 3,500 feet. Contact tower over Lima.
TWA 904, cleared ILS 14 left approach. Out of 3,500, passing Lakewood. Heading 095, tower at Lima.
904, reduce speed 160 knots. O'Hare weather, measured 200, overcast. Runway visual range 2,400 feet. Fog. Wind 160 degrees at 5 knots. Altimeter 2975.
TWA 904, slow to 160, altimeter 2975. Flaps 25. 25 flaps.
Flight 904 is now proceeding towards the localizer course for runway 14 left. The crew has reviewed the approach plate. They have completed the landing preliminary and final checklist down to one boxed item, which will be checked when the landing gear is extended. Completing these procedures early on the approach allows more time and attention to be devoted towards flying the approach. The first officer sets up his flight director to match the captains in headings and modes. If the first officer has not set up his flight director, the captain will remind him to do so at this time. Now the captain has a standby flight director. The flight engineer will help cross-check panels on final and must not hesitate to call any discrepancy to the captain's attention.
Localizer alive. Glide slope alive. Gear down. Down the gear. Complete the checklist.
Gear and anti-skid.
Down and check.
Landing final checklist is complete.
Flaps. Flaps 40. Flaps. Flaps 50. Outer marker. Flags checked.
When on glide slope and over Lima, each pilot and flight engineer shall compare the published altitude, 2,090 feet, and the indicated altitude. This serves as a cross-check on both altimeters and the navigation facility alignment.
Lima.
TWA 904, clear to land.
From the outer marker to decision height is approximately 2 minutes. Crew coordination is paramount. Approach and landing errors stem from airspeed deviation, excessive sink rate, too low, too flat, poor alignment, and failure to carry out missed approach procedures when no clearly defined runway exists. The first officer and flight engineer are cross-checking for flags, speed control, sync rate. The first officer is set to call out glide slope or localizer if 1 dot deviation exists.
Feet, 120 knots, sync, 500.
A pilot at 100 feet above the minimums should realize he has 2 choices when reaching decision height. He should be ready to make a missed approach or transition to contact and landing if visual cues permit.
Sequence flashers. Approach lights. Runway.
Low approach transition to visual can be successful only if, 1, when minimums are reached and contact established at minimum. The aircraft should be aligned so the continued flight path would place both main gear on the runway without maneuver. 2, the decision height altitude should be minimums as indicated. You have just observed crew coordination procedures that led to a successful approach and landing.